This is Shalom, your host, bringing you Gravity, a series dedicated to the discussion of science and how it interacts with biblical perspectives. In today's episode, we will talk about different theories put forth to answer key questions in life. And they are: who am I? Where did I come from? And where will I go when I die? Different theories have been put forth to answer these very important questions. I will discuss three theories, and they are evolution, gap theory, and young Earth creation. Evolution states that in the beginning, about 14 billion years ago, all the matter in the universe was concentrated into a single incredibly tiny point, which began to enlarge rapidly in a hot explosion called the Big Bang. Over time, it brought about galaxies, planets, and stars. Over 3.5 billion years ago, life began as a small microscopic organism, something like an amoeba or bacteria, and during the vast stretch of time, hundreds of millions of years, that microscopic organism diversified and evolved to everything living today. Evolution is split into 6 categories, and they are cosmic evolution, chemical evolution, stellar evolution, organic evolution, macroevolution, and microevolution. Cosmic evolution is the origin of time, space, and matter. This theory proposes that the universe is a result of a random explosion over 14 billion years ago. Is there any order coming out of a big explosion? Explosions cause chaos and random distribution of various parts. There is no evidence, as we'll see later episodes, that an explosion, or even the Big Bang, can ultimately produce organized entities, let alone life as we see it today. Chemical evolution is the formation of complex organic molecules from simpler inorganic molecules through chemical and physical processes that eventually allowed the first autocatalytic, self-reproducing molecule to exist. Again, as we'll see later on, it's impossible to explain the origin of life with the working of chemistry and physics alone. Stellar evolution is where stars and planets are formed from gas clouds. Organic evolution is where life begins from non-living matter through mutation and natural selection. Natural selection may help explain the survival of species, but not the arrival of species. As we'll see later, natural processes are not sufficient to explain the origin of life and the complexity of the cell. Macroevolution refers to the major evolutionary changes over time, the origin of new kinds of organisms from previously existing ones. Examples of this would be fish descending from invertebrate animals or whales descending from land mammals. Macroevolution, however, requires new genetic information to produce entirely new types of animals, and that has never ever been observed. Microevolution refers to varieties within a given kind. Change happens within a group, but the descendant is clearly of the same kind as the ancestor. Such changes might be accomplished by natural selection, in which a trait within the present variety is selected as the best for a given set of conditions, or accomplished by an artificial selection, such as when dog breeders produce a new breed of dog. Microevolution does not conflict with the biblical account of creation. Genesis 1 verse 11 says, "Then God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit, according to its kind, whose seed in itself on the earth, and it was so." Another theory used to answer the 3 key questions in life is the gap theory. This is a term used to describe biblical creationists who believe that God created the universe and all of its inhabitants over billions of years. According to this concept, Genesis verse 1 describes the initial creation of the universe. Following this, the standard events of cosmic evolution took place, which eventually produced our solar system and life on Earth. But then a devastating global catastrophe occurred, destroying all life on Earth and leaving a vast fossil graveyard everywhere. This situation is then said to be what happened in Genesis 1 verse 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. The catastrophe is thought to have occurred as a result of the rebellion of Satan and his angels against their Creator in heaven, with God then casting them out of heaven to the earth. Those who advocate the gap theory agree that the 6 days of creation were literal days, but they interpret them only as days of recreation, with God creating again many of the kinds of animals and plants destroyed in the catastrophe. The gap theory was developed mainly for the purpose of accommodating the great ages demanded by evolutionary geologists. Assumptions of the gap theory. 1. The gap between Genesis verse 1 and 2 lasted billions of years and provided all the necessary time for strata to be laid, fossils to be encased, and coal to form, and so forth. 2. They believe the verse saying the world was without form and void was a result of God's judgment, as a result of Satan being cast down from heaven. On the contrary, the phrase without form and void does not mean chaotic, but empty and unformed, and that creation was not yet finished. 3. They believe that the phrase saying darkness was upon the face of the deep indicates that sin and judgment had contaminated God's creation. The answer is not at all, for you should remember that God created light and darkness. As the psalmist wrote, "Thou makest darkness, and it is night." Psalms 104 verse 20. So just as the day has various purposes, so darkness or night has its purposes as well. The last theory to answer the 3 key questions in life is young earth creation. This is a religious belief that the universe, earth, and all life on earth was created by direct acts of God during a relatively short period of time, between 6,000 to 10,000 years, in 6 literal 24-hour days. I believe in young earth creation because it agrees with the biblical account. Problems with the gap theory. 1. The first problem is that the theory is inconsistent with God creating everything in 6 days, as the scripture states. Exodus 20 verse 11 says, "For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day." 2. The second problem of the gap theory is that it puts death, disease, and suffering before the fall, contrary to the scripture. Romans 5 verse 12 says, "Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, and in this way death came to all men. Therefore, we can understand that there could not have been any human sin or death before Adam, like the gap theory states." It also contradicts 1 Corinthians 15 verse 21. 3. The third problem is that it contradicts what God said in Genesis 1:31. God saw all that he had made was good. How could a supposed gap involving disease, violence, death, decay be described as very good? 4. Another problem is that it makes God look clumsy. What kind of God would he be if he needed millions of billions of years of death and suffering, trial and error, misfits and mutation before he ever got it right? 5. The gap theory says that Satan fell before day 7 and violates Genesis chapter 1 verse 31, and Ezekiel chapter 28, 12 to 15. 6. Was Satan already the god of this world when God gave Adam dominion over the earth? Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 to 28. 7. Lastly, how did the world exist and evolve for billions of years without the sun? This theory is without any scriptural justification, is unscientific, and is unnecessary. To start this episode, I pose 3 key questions that affect every human being. They are, who am I? Where did I come from? And where will I go when I die? What you believe about where you came from affects your ideas about the meaning of life and how you live it. If we are a result of a cosmic accident, therefore there is no reason or purpose to life. That is, if you believe in evolution, you and your worth amount to nothing and you will simply return to nothing when you die. On the contrary, if you believe there is a creator, then you are a special being and God brought you here for a purpose. Hence, you have to find that purpose and do it. Jeremiah chapter 33 verse 3 says, "Call to me and I will answer you, and I will tell you great and mighty things which you do not know." There is so much God wants to tell us about himself and teach about his ways. And he asks us to call to him so that he will tell us great and mighty things. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 13 says, "You will seek me and you'll find me when you search for me with all your heart." When we seek God with all our heart and call up to him in truth and search for him with eagerness from his words, we will surely find him. May God give us the desire to know great and mighty things about him. Thank you for watching this video. We hope that you have learned something. Please, could you like this video and follow us on Facebook? Our page is called Gravity. It's a sure thing.